Khurshidi and Zada with another installment of To the Edge. This week we have with us producer Chris Esper.
There he is.
Pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'm Mike Messier, by the way. And this is Chris.
Hey, good to see you again, Mike.
Good to see you, Chris.
All right, so let's begin with the beginning. What made you interested in film?
Oh gosh, I told the story so many times, but for those who haven't heard it.
Well, this will be most of the audience's first time.
Okay, but really began as a kid. I mean, as a kid, I always wanted to be an actor. You know, I grew up on movies and television. I would go to the video store all the time and rent all these VHS tapes.
Yep.
And I just filled my mind with all these images I was seeing, and it was just fascinating. It became like a second home for me. I would go there all the time, talk to the guy. The guy knew who I was, and I would always pester him and say, "Do you have this movie, that movie, that movie?" You know. So it was, and it was just quite an experience to do that. And then I would go home, watch all these movies, beg my parents to rent me some more, and watch more. Like, they would introduce me to all these different films from the 80s.
Right.
I go to the movies a lot, and at the time, my favorite actor, actually still kind of my favorite actor, I would say, I really loved Robin Williams' work.
Nice.
And
Mrs. Doubtfire and all that.
Yeah, I had seen Mrs. Doubtfire, I had seen Aladdin, and seen Jumanji. But at the time, I had no idea it was the same person. But finally, when I put two and two together, it's like, that was the whole reason I was just like, okay, he's my favorite actor because I know who he is. You know?
And that was when you
Well,
were
so you must have been very young.
I was 6 years old.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. And then
I was 6 years old.
Did you?
Yeah.
But as a matter of fact, did you grow into his other stuff, like Awakenings or
Yes.
Good Morning Vietnam?
Oh yes, yes. When I got into my teens and I started to watch movies that were more for my age
Right.
at the time, I would go back and see movies like Moscow on the Hudson,
Yep.
which to this day is still one of my favorite movies. It's a beautiful movie, actually.
And that's
Very
about
underrated.
a Russian guy who defects to the United States.
Yes.
He's a musician.
Yes.
He meets a beautiful Latina girlfriend.
Yes.
And the hijinks ensue. It's kind of
Yes.
a romantic comedy,
I would
fish
say
out
so.
of water
Yeah,
type of deal.
fish out of water romantic comedy. The story is nothing new. It's a very it's been done before, but the way it's been done, but the way Paul Mazursky directed this film,
Yeah.
he directed it with certain sensitivity
Right.
that made you feel like, okay, this is something new and exciting. I feel for this character.
Yes.
I want to see. I want to root for this Rob Williams character. Same with Good Morning Vietnam. You know what he's doing is not particularly good, but he makes you laugh. And,
Right.
you know, and then and he's good at playing that role of the clown that the big bad people don't want to hear about.
Right.
They don't want humor. I mean, it's a running theme throughout his work. Even Patch Adams is another example.
The outsider.
Yeah, the outsider coming in. Yeah.
Right. The Joker, outsider.
Exactly. Yeah.
Class clown,
Yeah.
fool,
Yeah.
as it were, of a king hierarchy. Not that he's foolish, but
Right.
the fool who's the kind of court jester.
Exactly. Exactly. So I was kind of drawn to that as a child, and for a long time I wanted to be an actor comedian just like him. I would do jokes for family parties, you know, and act different scenes in front of my family, and I did some plays. I took an acting class actually when I was 10 years old. I took like an improvisation class, and it was quite fun.
Yes.
Very exciting. I'd be on IMDb all the time when it first came out, and I became like the Rain Man of IMDb. I would look up dates and years, who was in what. Oh, this person was in this movie with this person, and then they were in this movie that was made by this person. So it became like 6 degrees of separation almost. You know?
Right, that's Internet Movie Database. For
Yes.
those who don't know what IMDb is, it's imdb.com. You can go to this website, look up any movie by title, look up any actor by name, director,
Yeah.
and you can probably find the three of us on there as well.
Yes.
I would think. Roland, are you on there yet?
No, not yet.
But you-
I haven't done any films yet, just public access. Though as soon as I get my first film done, I will be on there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Roland's been talking about. You want to talk about your film, or is that under hush hush right now?
We'll be hush hush right now.
Okay, very good.
I mean, I've discussed it in previous episodes. It's a neo-noir type of film, and that's all I'll say.
Okay.
Very cool.
And the neo-noir, have you done that, Chris? Some of your work? Would that be
I have.
1 foot in there?
To a degree, yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
one of my first college films was a neo-noir. it took more of an approach of the 1940s film noirs, but because it took place in contemporary times, it would be considered a neo-noir.
And what was the title of that one?
That was called Tough Love,
Yeah.
and to this day I don't like that movie, but but you know, it was my very first movie in college when I would just learn all the techniques I had just learned. Because before that, I was making YouTube films in high
Right,
school when
right.
I got my first camera.
Yeah.
And you know, it was just me as the actor, and I was also the director, the invisible camera guy, and
Yes.
also the writer, the producer, and the editor, whatever you want to call it. And basically, I set the camera on a tripod. The camera barely moved because I had no one operating the camera. It was just me.
Oh.
Right.
So I just set up the camera, hit record. I would go in front of the camera, do the action, go back, and then sort of direct myself in a
Yes.
way. And I go back in front of the camera, I do the same thing again, and I just kept doing that over and over again. And
From
like,
different angles.
yeah, different angles. And at one point, I did a silent comedy because I had discovered Charlie Chaplin when I was, I want to say, 15, 16 years old. To this day, I still love him to death. I love his movies.
Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. Were you a Buster Keaton guy at all? or
Yes,
just- okay,
yeah,
cool.
I did like Buster Keaton. I was very drawn to a lot of the early silent comedies.
Right.
The films of George Méliès, let's say. For those who don't know who he is, if you've seen the movie Hugo,
Okay.
Martin Scorsese's latest picture, that film is about George Méliès and about his movies, because he was making movies that were, he basically pioneered special effects,
Wow.
because there was no such thing as people disappearing from the camera. You know, he would set up the camera, hit record, and record the person in the frame. Oh, let's say it was a magician, and he would do a disappearing act, and then through an edit, through a cut, when he pulled the blanket, all of a sudden the person was gone. So it wasn't a matter of stage tricks. It was all film tricks. It was all film editing tricks. You know, that hasn't been done before. Through a puff of smoke, like they would cut. All of a sudden, it would kind of jump cut. You could see it now, but back then it was hidden pretty well. It would jump cut. All of a sudden, you see a puff of smoke, and the person disappeared when he pulled the blanket.
Now, did this gentleman, Malaise, did he make narrative features, or were they more like test screenings in the early days, or what
Well,
type
a lot of them were short, very short stories.
Okay.
Unfortunately, his career didn't pick up off the ground as well as he wanted to.
Right.
And so he kind of went into obscurity and started running a toy shop in a train station, which is what Hugo is about.
Okay.
And Hugo, the protagonist in the story, is a little boy that lives in the train station and discovers this man, George Méliès, and the friendship that they develop. And when I saw the film, I felt like it was made for me, because I felt like that kid when I was younger, always going to the video store, discovering this man,
Right.
and seeing all these movies in the story. It felt like it was like magic.
That kind of ties into what Roland was mentioning off camera, which is your film Still Life.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great segue into that. So, can you tell us about the film and how that got started and what inspired you to put together the film?
Well, the film got started, I want to say, about the idea, the conceptual idea started about, I want to say, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I want to say. And that began because I had just finished doing a bunch of different projects, and I was still in college. I went to New England Tech in Rhode Island.
Yes.
And while I was there, I had discovered how being an artist isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Welcome to the fun.
Yeah, exactly. Because growing up, anything I did, friends, family, they all say, Chris, this is so good, you're so talented, this and that. And so I was used to that, and I kind of became, in a way, I felt in a way I was indestructible
Right.
as an artist. And
Sure.
so that when I got to college and I discovered that teachers would be critiquing me
Right.
and really just giving it to me, saying, you know, Chris, this is pretty good, but you know, next time you should do this, or maybe
Right.
maybe do that next time. It will work a lot better. Or I don't really understand this. I don't know what you're trying to do here. And
Can I do an impersonation of your actors in the movie?
go right ahead.
Quick one? Okay. I think this is my buddy David Graziano as the photography teacher, right?
Yes.
And you be your main
Tim,
character.
Tim,
So
okay.
show me the
Martin.
picture, and I'll do a little impersonation.
I took this photograph here, and I wanted it to have a bit of an uneven feel, which is why I shot it at this angle.
Well, Chris, the content of the photograph is nice. I see what you're trying to do. but I think you could have pushed it further.
But what? What do you mean?
The angle of the picture is not really how you really feel about the content.
Yeah.
It's kind of a facade of emotion. I'd like to see you put real emotion, authenticity into the photograph. Just sit down and we'll talk to your peers about it.
That's very abstract because people can get different things out of looking at a picture. So
Yeah.
how can you make it more emotional or less? Or
Yeah, exactly. So
Was I in the ballpark of the movie?
yeah, very, very close, very, very close. And I'm sure David will like that impression.
Right. Yep.
That was the best impression I ever heard of him, if I ever heard one.
That's why I try my best.
That's right.
Good
You know,
guy.
when I was in college, I had to do a paper on mise-en-scène. I had to write 3 pages about a single frame in a film.
Really.
3 pages.
3
And I had to
pages.
describe the content of the scene, the framing, the context, what the characters were thinking, how we could tell this from the film, and what this all represented the film from that one image.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a lot of, BSing.
Well, the thing with teachers or peers, like in your movie, Still Life, which I've seen, is they can break your spirit almost.
Yeah.
Or break your spirit, period. And
Yeah.
if I could jump in on about your movie, it's kind of like the story of a guy who is, as a child, he's a photographer in the backyard. He grows up, and ultimately this peer pressure, this teacher criticism is a challenge for him to deal with.
Yes, because he's never been through it. And first-time artists, they go through that all the time. And I based on a quote by Ira Glass, which I wish I could say offhand, but it's a very, very long quote.
Right.
But essentially, what Ira Glass talks about, for those who don't know who he is, he's a radio host, and he's also a writer. And he talks about, from a writer's perspective, about how when he first started out, the things that he was making, it just wasn't that good. It was trying to be good, it had potential, but it wasn't. Something just didn't feel right to him. So he discovered that every beginning artist seems to go through this, where they feel like that their work is just not that good as they want it to be. And so they go through this phase where they almost quit or they give up on it because they think, I'm never gonna get out of this phase.
Right.
But he says you just have to fight your way through it, create a new story or a new piece every week, or in the film's case, a new photograph, if we're talking about still life. In a writer's case, write a new story every week, that's what he talks about. So he says try to create a new story every week and just fight your way through it. And it's normal to go through this. We all do, and we all get through it eventually. So, but he says it takes a long time for us to get out of that phase. So making the film for me was almost like a therapy session.
Good for you.
Because it was something that I go through all the time, and I still go through to this day. Even after the film is made, the feelings have been justified
Right.
in the film, but at the same time, those feelings, they can still exist once in a while. But the whole point of the film is just that sometimes as artists, it's hard. It's a very tough thing to get into, but if you love it and you're passionate and you have the drive and ambition, you can do it. You just have to learn to take that critique and realize that it's a good thing. It's not always a bad thing.
Persevere and never quit.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what I do.
That's good, Roland. And Roland, on the last tapings, you hit the, how many episode anniversaries, Roland?
That was 50 episodes between 2 shows. I did 20 episodes for a show called On the Rise at a previous station, and then 30 episodes of this current program, To the Edge.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
I've been here for 5 or 6 episodes, or maybe a little more, but it's fun. And if I could just say a little shout out to our audience, sometimes you see us on the TV, on the public access, or when the show's on the internet, and people are like, oh, that's cool, those guys, how do I, they think it's this complicated process.
Yeah,
But you would come down to the Bridgewater Public Access Station here on Spring Street, talk to Jeff Fowler, the producer, or the other people here in the studio, and that's just in Bridgewater, but in pretty much every local community, there's some type of public access station. And
Yeah.
for the most part, these public access stations go underused, I would say.
Definitely. This
Yeah.
is a very underused market. All you have to do is go up to the manager of the station, propose a series, and then find a way to maintain it on a regular basis. You just sit in front of a camera, they hit record, and then you go from there. As long as you have a topic to discuss for half an hour, you should be all set.
Yeah,
That's right.
And that's only one way of doing a show. You can probably do a show on location, cover sporting events, cover burlesque shows if it was PG rated, I guess, you know, which I've done on the Mike Messier show, a little PG-13 rated sometimes, but
Yeah.
you can cover rock and roll music and so on and so forth. I speak from some experience. I did or I still do the Mike Messier show, public access down in Rhode Island. While I'm yapping off, I'll mention this T-shirt that I'm wearing, which is the Road Warriors legendary wrestling tag team. My buddy Andrew O'Hara creates this shirt, and he's on the internet on Facebook. Andrew O'Hara, creator of the Road Warriors T-shirt. We snack on danger and we dine on death, which I think the three of us kind of do that.
Yeah.
In a way, yes.
Yeah. But getting back to Chris, you know, what's next for you?
There's a lot on my plate. I mean, there's possibly a documentary in the works,
Okay.
which is not my first one. I've done one before, which you're in. So
That's right. Yeah, the power of cinema.
yeah, yeah. It's about film and cinema, about how it affects us psychologically and emotionally.
That's good.
Yeah.
Did you interview a lot of subjects?
I interviewed Mike Messier here. I interviewed Brian Casey, who is a Rhode Island filmmaker. I interviewed a film teacher of mine, Evan Villari, and a psychologist from Kansas, who also has a film degree. So he knew a great deal about the history of cinema and was able to put in a great deal of detail as to how he feels about why it affects us the way it does, certain movies. He described this one great film from the 1800s, very early film, of just a train coming towards the camera.
Oh, I've seen that film.
Yeah, and people in the audience, they were ducking under the seats and trying to run out of the theater because
Right.
they had never seen something like this other than actually being there, live action.
Right.
So to them, you know, it was like they were thinking of it as like a play because up until then there was only stage performances before there was film, and so they expected the train to actually come towards them and hit them, so, like come through the screen, because they had no idea what this medium was all about. It was still very new at the time.
Even the pictures moving, that was a big deal.
Oh,
But
yeah.
psychologically, they still have that to an effect. Have you ever been to the Museum of Science, like the Omni Muger Theater?
No.
Well,
I haven't.
any like 3D theater in general where it's like
Like,
dome
yeah,
shaped,
yeah.
Right.
and it's a large screen and you're sitting there, and then they show you something like you're falling down or you're riding
Yeah,
through traffic,
yeah.
Right.
and it's like you almost want to hit the brakes, so brace yourself for the
Oh, yeah.
impact,
Yeah.
because your senses are fooled, even though you know better.
That's great.
Yeah, one of the first films to do that had that widescreen format where you look like you're actually in the scene was called This is Cinerama.
Right.
Cinerama was the first widescreen picture ever made.
Wow.
1952. Yeah.
The
52. Wow.
Beautiful film.
Seems kind of late.
when you're talking about the train scaring the audience, I was
Yeah.
just reading Sidney Poitier, if I pronounce his last name correct. Sidney Poitier, the great American actor, first African American actor to win an Oscar, and he was relating how his parents came to see his first movie. That was the first movie they ever saw. He was in it, and his mom was actually screaming at the film. You know, watch out, Sidney, watch out! You
Yeah.
know, because she
Yeah.
thought it was a real experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
there you go.
Oh yeah, with great dialogue and great camera angles and great editing and whatnot. You know, you could have a great movie that could affect people that way, where they actually think what's happening on screen is actually happening.
Right. We aspire to that as creative people. The three of us, Roland looking to make his piece, and me and Chris making a few, and aspire to get that magic what if type of deal
Yeah.
with the audience. You know, connect with the audience so well that they think what they're watching is reality, because in a sense it is reality.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a version of reality, a dreamlike state perhaps, but you know, it is what it is, and hopefully it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Or an interpretation of reality.
I like that. But isn't all of reality an interpretation of a movie? So,
Mike
yeah.
Messier is going into his professorial stage.
Yeah, right. Existential time.
That's
with
right.
Mike.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's why Still Life was so satisfying, because people actually cried at the end of the movie and said, "I've been through that."
Well, yeah.
I've had photographers come up to me and actually say, "You nailed it. I went through that exact same thing."
There's a moment in your movie when the lead character is walking down the sidewalk. He's
Yeah.
just had an experience with rejection of critiquing of his work, and as he bumps into people on the sidewalk, he has an image in his head of them in a still life photography session. So he'll bump into an older guy, and then he sees well, he's not that old, but he bumps into a gentleman of a certain age, and then he has an image in his head of the gentleman of a certain age standing a long shadow, and then in the shadow is a teddy bear. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you colorize the teddy bear?
Yes.
Okay, so you have
Yes.
a colored teddy bear and then a black and
Black
white
and white,
image
yeah.
of the gentleman
man,
standing. Yeah.
So, you've taken still life on the film circuit, the film festivals. Can you tell us about that?
Right now, it's been submitted to festivals. I haven't got any word if it's been accepted yet. I had just submitted them maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, and I submitted to 4 festivals: one in Rhode Island, one in Massachusetts, Boston International, and I submitted one to New York and Los Angeles. And so we shall see what happens.
The interesting thing with your movie is that it's about handling criticism of your work. How are you handling the criticism about your movie, Still Life, which is about handling criticism?
Well, the reviews have been really good, actually. So I mean, there hasn't been really criticism per se. I mean, there have been people that said, maybe the sound could be a little bit better and such, or maybe this could be better. But I've been handling it quite fine.
Good.
There was one, the very first review that came in from filmthreat.com. It wasn't the greatest review, but certainly wasn't the worst. I mean,
Yeah.
when I first read it, that was very hard to handle. I mean, he felt the story was cliched and such. I was shocked,
Right.
of course, but and it took me a little while to handle it. But you're always gonna get that.
Yeah.
And so I just pushed through and just sent it out.
Right.
My aim is not to produce a 4-star film right off the bat. My aim is to produce a film that everyone likes, so the criticism isn't, wow, this is horrible, this is terrible.
Yeah.
If I can produce something that looks competent, I've gotten the job done, and then I can improve from there.
Yeah,
That's-
exactly.
that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very well put.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking about what you said with Film Threat, and I had some of my stuff reviewed by them. And I was lucky, my first couple of reviews were pretty positive, and then my next couple of pieces that I sent to them were big thumbs down from
Really?
Film Threat. And it was
Oh,
kind of like,
boy.
I thought you liked me. And I've been a little gun shy about sending them more stuff. And maybe that's, because it does hurt for me, when you put a little time into your project and then you send it out to a nice website like Film Threat. See, they are nice. And then you get this critique, and then it's like, man, what am I?
Yeah.
Should I even send it to these guys? Because once they put it on the internet and it's critique like that, you have all these film buff guys and girls who are reading this website, and you feel like, but any press is good press in a sense.
That's
so,
true. Yeah.
you know.
But sorry, go ahead.
You'll have some film snobs who'll just rip into everything no matter what.
Right.
I actually worked once for a place called Executive Advertising, and they told us that statistically, 7% of people will never be satisfied with anything.
That's
as long
true.
as you can satisfy the 93%, you've done your
Right.
job.
That's very
Yeah,
true.
and I've been very lucky in terms of this film because the 3 other the film's been reviewed 4 times. and
Yep.
The other 3 were extremely positive, including one from theindependentcritic.com,
Yep.
which is another good site. He gave us 3 out of 4 stars. He was very, very kind to us,
Nice.
and thought the acting was good. He even pointed out some names. He said David Graciano was very strong
Yep.
as a professor. Tim Bonavita was good at showing the insecurities of an artist, and that Maya DeVitt was intelligently written. I think he claimed, and he thought the DP did a great job shooting it. So,
Yeah.
reviews like that, or I pay attention to those.
They're encouraging.
So,
Yeah.
And also the local audiences. I know that you show the film in both Pawtucket at the Visitors Center,
yep.
and also with our buddy Crosa Michelazzo kind of helped you with that event. And
Yes.
then down in Providence at the Brooklyn Coffee and Tea
Yes.
House at a film night that I host.
Yes. Mhm.
And that was fun. The first Thursday of every month at the Brooklyn Coffee and Tea House in Providence. You can come down and see films for $5, local films. Chris showed it there, and it was well received. And it's just interesting that the transition from showing your film to family and friends versus sending it to a website that critiques films, you might cross into that 7%.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So it's just tough. And I just read a statistic that the Sundance Film Festival only accepted 1.4% of their films this year,
Wow.
of their entries, and they had 12,000 something entries.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's rough.
That is rough.
Yeah.
It's very rough.
So 98.6 films out of 100, I guess, were, not accepted. And you have all these sad filmmakers running around the country with their heads down for a couple of days. So we'll see.
So that means you have to break Fahrenheit temperature to get in.
Yeah.
Wow.
98.6.
What a way to put it.
Yeah. Very well put.
Yeah. So.
Get the film fever going.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, no, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Not getting accepted, that's one of the worst feelings.
Yeah, it is, because you know that it's a numbers game. You know that it's a statistical tough thing to break into, something like Sundance or Tribeca or whatever. But you
Yeah.
still, when you send that film in the package, almost every filmmaker's like, yeah, this is gonna be it. You
Yeah,
know, this
yeah.
is gonna be it.
Well, you have to believe that.
You have to
Right.
believe it, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's like asking the prettiest girl out to the prom. You know, this is gonna happen. Maybe it won't.
As soon as you start doubting yourself, you won't go through with it. You
Right.
won't even do it.
Right,
exactly.
Right. You still talking about the
Exactly.
prettiest girl at the prom or something? No, no.
Ah,
Well, that could go either way.
Little public access humor for everybody. Zoinks.
So wrapping this up, actually before we wrap this up, can
Yes.
you tell us about the process of getting the film submitted to like the houses, the coffee shops and things like that? How is that?
just a matter of asking, keeping up online, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, or just doing your research on Google, finding out who screens local films.
Mm-hmm.
You just keep sending emails. I would send, when I first started, to find a job, let's say, I would send probably around 50 emails a day, just trying to
Yeah.
get something done.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it worked.
Good.
I got a lot of connections out of that.
Locally, the Brooklyn Coffee and Tea House can be reached at rodywood@yahoo.com. That's RHODYWOOD, rodywood@yahoo.com. Just send them an email. Say Chris and I and Roland sent you with your film, and usually they take stuff 25 minutes and less for the first
25
Thursday of the
minutes
month.
or less.
But what Chris was saying applies to the whole country and the world that could be watching our show here, because Google, Independent Film Festival, Google, local screenings, put the name of your city in there in the search engine,
Exactly,
and you'll
yeah.
find something.
All right, I think that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you for guest starring with us on To the Edge.
Oh, anytime. I had
Yes.
fun.
And thank you for making the trip, Mike Messier. I know this was really short notice.
No, it's fun. I enjoy being here all the time, Roland. Thank you for having me.
Great. And we'll
Thanks for
see the
having
rest of you next week.